Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. You know how much we love to sink our teeth into a good topic? And this time, oh boy, this time we're going full-on spooky.
Spooky and surprisingly relevant to our understanding of, well, ourselves. We're talking werewolves.
Werewolves. I bet you think you've got us all figured out, right? Movies, books, the whole 9 yards.
Well, buckle up because we're about to take you on a deep dive through history, medicine, and even a little mythology.
And to guide us on this journey into the heart of werewolf lore, we have an incredible source lined up. It's an academic paper straight from the History of Psychiatry journal.
Catchy title too, Lycanthropy in Byzantine Times, AD 330-1453.
Byzantine werewolves. Now we're talking. See, this is what I love about these deep dives. You never know what you're going to get.
And this paper doesn't disappoint. It's not about trying to prove werewolves actually existed, you know? It's more about, dissecting the why. Why did people believe? Where did those stories come from? It's a real blend of history, mythology, medicine, all rolled into one.
And speaking of mythology, we got to kick things off with the OG werewolf himself, King Lycaon.
Greek mythology fans, you know what I'm talking about. Lycaon didn't treat Zeus so well, did he?
Messed with the big guy, got turned into a wolf. Seems a tad extreme, even for the king of the gods, don't you think?
Well, there's more to it than that. Lycaon's transformation, it wasn't just about punishment. It speaks to a much deeper fear, one that pops up in cultures all over the world. The fear that if you consume something taboo, something you absolutely should not, you risk, well, losing your humanity, turning into a beast.
And in Lycaon's case, that forbidden feast was human flesh. Cannibalism. Talk about a taboo topic.
Exactly. It gets right to the core of what makes us human, doesn't it? And the word lycanthropy itself, it reflects that primal mashup. Lykos, meaning wolf, and anthropos for man. Wolfman.
Makes you think, huh? But here's where things take a turn for the truly fascinating. Werewolves weren't just campfire stories, the stuff of myths and legends. Byzantine physicians, actual doctors, they were writing about lycanthropy too.
And here's the thing about those Byzantine doctors. They were all about preserving that ancient knowledge, but they were also trying to make sense of it all through a medical lens. Surprisingly modern when you think about it.
So instead of blaming Zeus and the gods, they were all, diagnosing demonic possession?
Not quite. They actually saw lycanthropy as a mental illness, not some kind of supernatural curse. They even went so far as to identify specific symptoms.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Lay it on me. What did werewolfism look like to a Byzantine doctor?
Picture this. Pale skin, dry eyes, unable to sleep, constantly thirsty.
Sounds rough.
And don't forget, scarred legs. All that running around in the night.
Ah, right, the whole wolf thing. So if they weren't prescribing silver bullets, what was the cure?
They had their methods. Bloodletting was a popular one.
Of course, bloodletting, the cure for everything back then.
Right. They also experimented with special diets and even used opium.
Opium for werewolves. Now that's a prescription I wouldn't want to fill. But seriously, did any of it actually work?
Debatable. What's interesting is that even among those Byzantine doctors, there wasn't a consensus. They debated the root cause of lycanthropy.
Ooh, a medical mystery. Tell me more.
Well, most of them, they categorized it as a type of melancholy, what we might call depression today.
Makes sense. Right. But hold on, you said not everyone agreed.
Exactly. There was one doctor, Paul of Nicaea, he had a different take. He called it mania, saw it as a state of intense excitement, energy.
Whoa, two completely different ends of the spectrum there. How did they explain such wildly different interpretations?
Well, their theories were rooted in that ancient concept of humors. You know, the idea that your bodily fluids, your blood, phlegm, all that, it directly affected your mental state.
Ah, yes, the four humors.
Yeah.
So they were basically trying to balance out the werewolf juice.
In a way. And look, it might seem out there now, but back then, that was cutting-edge science. It's incredible how long ago people were grappling with these ideas about the mind, about mental illness.
Speaks to the timeless nature of it all, doesn't it? What makes us human? What happens when we lose control? Big questions.
Absolutely. And as we move out of the Byzantine era and into the Middle Ages, those questions, they take on a whole new meaning, a much darker meaning.
Maybe witch hunts. Things are about to get heavy.
Yeah, the witch hunts. It's like all that rational thought about mental illness we saw with the Byzantines, it just kind of went out the window.
Because instead of folks potentially suffering from a medical condition, they became
monsters.
Yeah.
Literally. Werewolves went from patients to full-on creatures of the night. It got tangled up with witchcraft, with demonic possession, and that's where things get really dark.
Yeah, our source talks about people being executed as werewolves. And the evidence was flimsy at best. Can you imagine
Yeah.
being accused of something so outlandish and facing those kinds of consequences?
It really shows you how easily fear can be manipulated, how quickly ignorance can turn dangerous, and the punishments, man, they were brutal.
Our source even mentions people having their skin peeled off to prove they weren't hiding wolf skins underneath.
It's just horrifying when you think about the things people did in the name of werewolf hunting.
Makes you wonder how many other monsters throughout history were really just...
Misunderstood individuals, absolutely. But, before we get too bogged down in the darkness of the Middle Ages.
Good point. We need a little levity after that.
Exactly. So you know how you were asking if all werewolves were, well, wolves?
Yeah, I'm still holding out for a werewolf unicorn, but hey, you never know.
Not quite unicorns, but turns out shapeshifting wasn't limited to our canine friends cultures. Cultures all over the world, they each had their own spin on the whole transformation thing.
Okay, hit me with it. What other creatures got in on the action?
Well, like in Japan, you had the kitsune, tricky fox spirits, masters of illusion. Then there's China, where it was tigers and hyenas stalking the night.
Tigers and hyenas. See, that's scary. What about Africa? Anything goes there, right?
You said it. Lions, elephants, even sharks. Seems like every culture picked a creature that really embodied their fears.
I guess it makes sense, right? Your local monster is way scarier than one from far away. But wait, you said it wasn't just animals, right?
Right. There were those stories about humans transforming, too, especially those in power.
Okay, you're talking about Emperor Justin II now, right?
Yeah.
The Byzantine emperor. The one who acted like, what was it, a cat and a dog? Our source definitely piqued my curiosity with that one.
That's the one. It's wild, right? According to the historical accounts, he was all over the place, walking on all fours, barking, meowing, even chucking things out of windows.
Sounds like a typical Tuesday, am I right?
I mean, it's easy to laugh now, but we're talking about an emperor here.
True, true. But were people at the time really thinking werewolf emperor?
Not quite. The whole lycanthropy thing, it didn't seem to be on anyone's mind, at least not when it came to the emperor. But there was definitely a lot of talk about his mental state.
And what was the verdict back then? What did people think was going on?
Back then, they used terms like frenzy and mania, It's important to remember we're looking back at this through a modern lens.
Right. No diagnosing from centuries away.
Okay.
So we've got Byzantine doctors starting to look at lycanthropy as a medical condition.
But other mental illnesses, still a lot of mystery and stigma surrounding them.
Even for an emperor. It really makes you think about the power of perception, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it reminds us that while we've come a long way in our understanding of mental health, there's still a long way to go.
Well said. So let's recap for a second. We started with Zeus and Greek myths, then we journeyed through Byzantine medicine.
And then right into the heart of the Middle Ages with those chilling witch hunts.
And now we're face to face with a Byzantine emperor whose behavior has puzzled historians for ages, all because of werewolves. Who knew they could take us on such a wild ride?
See? This is why we do these deep dives. Always guaranteed to uncover something fascinating.
Uncover is right. And speaking of uncovering, I think it's time to bring this whole fascinating and at times pretty unsettling story full circle.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you think about it. We've covered so much history just by following the trail of the werewolf. From myths to medicine to, well, let's just say the Middle Ages were a time, huh?
And who could forget Emperor Justin II? His story really drives home the point that mental health, it's not a modern invention. It's something people have grappled with for centuries.
It really makes you think. And on that note, before we wrap up this deep dive into all things werewolf, I wanted to circle back to those witch hunts we talked about. Man, that's some dark stuff. It's hard not to feel for those folks accused based on nothing but fear and superstition.
It's a stark reminder of what can happen when fear overrides reason, when we let ignorance guide our actions.
It makes you appreciate how far we've come in terms of understanding mental health, even if we still have a ways to go.
Yeah.
But hey, on a lighter note, you mentioned earlier about shapeshifters in other cultures. You got my curiosity going. Got any more of those fascinating examples up your sleeve?
Oh, I've got a whole treasure trove of shapeshifters for you. Remember those kitsune from Japanese folklore, the shape-shifting foxes? Super tricky, those ones. But also, they represent intelligence, magic. It's not all bad.
Right, like those double-edged swords. You got to be careful what you wish for. What about other cultures? Any other shapeshifters that come to mind?
Oh, absolutely. The Navajo tradition has skinwalkers, powerful medicine people who can transform into any animal they choose. But those powers, they come with a heavy price. It's not all fun and games.
There's always a catch, isn't there? It's like these shapeshifters, whether we're talking werewolves, kitsunes, skinwalkers, They tap into something deep within us, don't they? Our fears, our fascination with the unknown.
Exactly. It's like they're a reflection of our own relationship with the wildness, both inside us and out in the world.
And sometimes, those inner monsters, they're the most terrifying ones of all. Well, folks, there you have it. From Zeus's wrath to Byzantine doctors, medieval witch hunts, and even a shape-shifting emperor, we've covered a lot of ground today.
And we've learned that the tale of the werewolf, it's more than just a spooky story. It's a window into history, culture, and the enduring power of our own hopes and fears.
And as we sign off for today, we'll leave you with this. If even emperors weren't safe from misjudgment and misunderstanding, who else throughout history might have been unfairly labeled? Whose stories haven't been told? Something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and never stop questioning the stories history tells us.